I want to talk a little bit about Rebel Moon, it being a massive disappointment, and space operas in general, and also my science fiction book series. I'll be up front. I've written a 7-book series. It's called EMBARK, and I want to talk a bit about that and why you should look at picking these books up if you are a science fiction space opera fan. But before we get to that, Zack Snyder announced a few years ago that he had written this story to be a Star Wars story and actually pitched it to Lucasfilm, and they had rejected it. When he made this announcement, he said that he would be making this his own space opera epic for Netflix. And I was cautiously optimistic. I haven't seen the R-rated version of Rebel Moon, and quite honestly, based off of what I saw in the initial release, I probably won't watch the R-rated version because I'm fairly certain I know what he's going to be including in this R-rated version, and it's nothing that I really need to see, and I don't think it's going to go and improve on the story. Somebody on another podcast, I think it was Star Wars Theory, one of the hosts, had made a comment that it was a mistake to go and label this as being a Star Wars movie because, unfortunately, you're going to have those comparisons. And when I decided to write my own science fiction space opera series, that was one of the things that I struggled with. I was inspired by George Lucas, the storytelling of James Cameron. I grew up on Star Wars, and I was a fan of Star Wars before I was a fan of anything else. And so I wanted to create my own science fiction space opera, but I knew that if you go and set something out way out in the galaxy a long time ago or in the future, and it's set apart from Earth, that it's just going to be compared to Star Wars, and that's what Zack Snyder is dealing with now. Now, albeit, it just wasn't a very good movie. It just didn't flow well. Maybe with the second part attached to it, it'll be better, but it kind of felt like a shell of a story. But I understand and kind of sympathize what Zack Snyder is dealing with, and I agree with that other podcaster that it was a mistake for him to go and put so much on this being the next Star Wars, because it really was just going to go and raise the expectations that are almost impossible to meet as Star Wars fans when it comes to actual Star Wars content being produced. So, and I hope this doesn't keep studios from, I hope studios aren't reluctant to go and make science fiction space opera epics, because I feel there is a lane there that can be filled because of individuals' frustrations with Star Wars. It's been very hit and miss. I was not a big fan of Kenobi or Book of Boba Fett. I was, however, a big fan of Ahsoka. So there's a lane there that can be filled. But when you're creating a space opera, it's always going to be compared to George Lucas. And the direction that I decided to take in my science fiction space opera series, EMBARK, was, all right, you know what? I'm going to make a space opera, but I'm going to set it in the future on Earth, a future where air and space flight culture has replaced car culture. And I'm going to make book one a mashup of my favorite genres growing up. So that would be space operas, your 90s say anything type of romantic comedies, for lack of a better word. More recently, Ready Player One, and of course, Star Wars with a little bit of Fast and Furious thrown in. Now, that sounds like a weird mashup, but from what I've heard of individuals that have read the book, it works. It's an apocalyptic tale that sets up and turns into a massive space opera. In the not-so-distant future, as I mentioned, flight culture has replaced car culture. Two of Earth's largest corporations now supply the planet with the technology and fuel to make air and space flight available to everybody. Taft Guardia, our hero in the story, spends his weekends at an abandoned flying field racing through the skies with his three best friends, his self-proclaimed squadron of pilots, and the girl he longs to be with, Keith Amaro. After receiving a mysterious message from her deceased aerospace engineer father, Keitha and Taft make a shocking discovery. Earth is now suddenly facing a massive disaster, and that's when a ruthless and power-hungry enemy emerges. Unwittingly, Taft, Keitha, and their self-proclaimed squadron of friends are thrust into the middle of humanity's fight for survival and a future among the stars. Again, I wanted it to have the adventure and the thrill of Star Wars without being Star Wars. And what was just one book that I planned on writing turned into 7. I hope you'll come back and hear about the other books, because my intention was to make each of these stories distinct in and of themselves, to be subgenres, to have subgenres of space operas, much in the same way that we saw the initial phases of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, which of course has failed, in my opinion, in the more recent phases, where I have one story that's a bit of a heist, another story that plays more like the 80s emblem tales of Steven Spielberg and Goonies. I have another story in here that is really more tuned to being the Fast and Furious. I have another one that's kind of a crime-solving adventure. So I hope you'll check them out. If you want to take a look at my books, you can go to Amazon.com or mynerdworld.net. It's available on Kindle Unlimited, ebook, hardcover, paperback, and audiobook. And you can purchase your hardcover and paperbacks directly from me. All you got to do is email thejohnjustice, Jon, thejohnjustice@gmail.com, and I'll give you instructions on how you can purchase paperbacks or hardcovers directly from me if you're interested. And again, come on back and check out my thoughts on the other books in my series as well. If you like science fiction and you like space opera, I think you're really going to enjoy my books. Thanks for watching.